The garage door creaked open, letting in a cold Connecticut breeze. I pulled my cardigan tighter and fumbled for the light, revealing my bedroom, a fold-out cot squeezed between boxes and rusty tools. This was my reward for giving my daughter everything I'd built. Just 50 feet away, the beautiful home I had crafted stood warm and bright, filled with my son-in-law's laughter. At 68, I was sleeping in my own garage while the man who promised to care for my daughter threw another dinner party without me. Before we dive back in, let us know where you're tuning in from. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button because tomorrow, I've got something even more special lined up just for you. The garage door creaked open, letting in a blast of cold Connecticut air. I pulled my cardigan tighter around my shoulders and fumbled for the light switch. The dim glow revealed my new bedroom, a fold-out cot wedged between dusty cardboard boxes and rusty garden tools. Just 50 feet away, the house Thomas and I had built stood warm and bright, its windows glowing with life. Inside, Andrew Reynolds, my son-in-law, was hosting yet another dinner party, without me. I was Eleanor Wilson, 68 years old, and I was sleeping in my own garage. Jessica, my daughter, had said earlier, "Mom, Andrew thinks it might be awkward if you come around. You know how his colleagues are." What she didn't say was that Andrew didn't think I was good enough for his image. What he didn't know was who I really was, or who I was about to become. After Thomas died 5 years ago, I was content to stay in our family home, the spacious colonial we'd built with Wilson Construction, our family business. Thomas had been the builder, I the business mind. Together, we created a legacy. Our only child, Jessica, was our pride. We spoiled her with dance lessons, private schools, European vacations. When she met Andrew during her senior year, I had my doubts. His charm was too polished, too calculated. Thomas told me I was being overprotective, that Andrew came from a good family with a reputable firm. Jessica was radiant around him. He was handsome, neat, and promising. I wanted to believe. Thomas's diagnosis shattered us. Pancreatic cancer took him quickly. In his final months, he obsessed about Jessica's future. "Promise me you'll look after her," he whispered, gripping my hand. 3 months after the funeral, Andrew proposed. The wedding was extravagant, more than Thomas and I had imagined for our daughter. His parents, Robert and Patricia Reynolds, made clear their expectations. Patricia once said, eyeing my home, "The Wilson house is charming, but hardly suitable for our guest list." I held my tongue. This was Jessica's day. After the honeymoon, Andrew started dropping hints about their living arrangements. They stayed in a luxury downtown apartment paid by his parents, but Jessica missed Maplewood. Andrew said, "She talks about raising kids in the house she grew up in. It would mean so much." Grief softened me. I gave Jessica the deed to the house, understanding I'd live in the guest suite we built for my mother years ago. Jessica's joy made it worthwhile, or so I thought. At first, the arrangement was pleasant. I kept to myself, volunteering, meeting friends. But Martha warned me, "Ellie, you're being too generous. You should keep some control." I laughed it off. Andrew was a financial advisor. I trusted him. What I didn't tell Martha was that Thomas and I had more assets, investments, a cabin in Vermont, offshore accounts, silent partnerships. Thomas had always said, "A smart woman has a backup plan." After his death, I quietly sold the company for a sum Andrew would envy. But the dynamics changed. Andrew reorganized the kitchen, moved my special dishes out of reach. Jessica said maybe I shouldn't use the main entrance when guests came. Andrew needed to maintain a certain image. I wondered when I became incompatible with that image. I'd run a multi-million-dollar business, yet Andrew's polished world rejected me. Then came the remodeling. Contractors tore out the cabinetry Thomas had built by hand in the master bedroom. "We're updating the house to reflect their lifestyle," the project manager said. Jessica said Andrew wanted to surprise me with a modern touch, but the handcrafted oak cabinets were gone. The reading nook, the hand-painted tiles, they vanished piece by piece. With each change, a part of Thomas and me disappeared. I started spending more time with Martha. "This isn't right," she said. "That's your home. You built it." "It's Jessica's now," I replied bitterly. I'd signed away my rights. Confronting Andrew would only strain my relationship with Jessica. 6 months after signing the deed, I returned from a visit to find my belongings moved from the guest suite to the detached garage. The guest suite was a cot, a space heater, a small dresser, and a cramped bathroom in the former tool room. Jessica met me in the driveway, guilt and defiance flickering across her face. "Andrew's parents are staying for a month. They need the guest suite. And you expect me to sleep out here? It's November, Jessica. Winters here aren't garage-friendly." "It's insulated," she said. "Temporary." Where was I supposed to sleep during this family discussion? She looked away. Andrew thought it easier to present the solution than cause me stress. That night on the cot, the distant laughter from the house stung. I admitted the truth: Jessica wouldn't stand up for me. Andrew's hold over her was stronger than her love for me. I was truly alone. Weeks became months. Andrew's parents stayed longer, replaced by colleagues, friends, even his personal trainer, all hosted at my expense. The space heater struggled. My cough worsened. Martha insisted on a doctor. Prolonged exposure to cold. Not safe for someone your age. Martha was furious. "This is emotional abuse." I never thought of it that way before. One evening, I knocked on the front door. Jessica answered, her voice tense. "Mom, we're in the middle of dinner. I need to speak with you both." Andrew appeared behind her, smooth smile fixed. "We have guests. Can it wait?" "No. I have pneumonia from living in that garage. The doctor says I can't stay there." Inside, guests watched curiously. I introduced myself, reminding them this was my home once. Andrew's smile faltered. "You're embarrassing Jessica," he hissed. "Am I embarrassing you? Or that your mother is sick from sleeping in a garage while you entertain?" Jessica's face crumpled, then hardened. "You're being dramatic. The garage is adequate. If you don't like it, consider other options." My own daughter suggested I move out completely. I left, dignity bruised but resolve growing. I called George Thompson, Thomas's old partner and friend. "It's time to execute the contingency plan." George arrived days later. We met quietly, planning my comeback. I had assets Andrew didn't know about. Horizon Holdings, our secret LLC owning the cabin, investments, accounts totaling millions. Thomas had planned for this. Andrew's firm, Reynolds Financial, was unstable, losing clients. George found a former employee willing to talk, a whistleblower named Olivia Chin. She suspected fraud, manipulated client returns, targeted elderly clients, and was fired after raising concerns. Together, George and I prepared to expose Andrew's web of deceit. But first, I had to endure the garage exile a while longer, gathering information, playing the defeated mother-in-law. Jessica was conflicted but confused. Andrew controlled her world, and she still loved him. But I planted seeds of doubt. The house was still hers, but I had power Andrew didn't expect. The night of our carefully arranged dinner arrived. I had spent the afternoon in George's hotel room, freshening up and changing into a black pantsuit that projected authority and quiet strength, the Elena Wilson Andrew had tried to erase. My silver hair was freshly styled, makeup subtle but precise, and I wore the pearl earrings Thomas had given me on our 30th anniversary. George grinned appreciatively. "There she is. Andrew won't know what hit him." I returned his smile with cold determination. "That's the plan." The hotel restaurant was upscale but discreet, perfect for a showdown without spectacle. We secured a corner table with a clear view of the entrance. I felt a calm settle over me. For months I'd been pushed aside, dismissed, made invisible. Tonight, I would reclaim my place, not as a shadow, but as a force. Jessica and Andrew arrived promptly at 7 p.m., dressed formally, Jessica in a navy cocktail dress I hadn't seen before, Andrew in an expensive tailored suit. I noted the tension in Jessica's shoulders and the possessive way Andrew guided her, hand resting on her back as if to claim her in front of me. Andrew's steps faltered the moment he saw me. The surprise on his face was a small, delicious victory. "Eleanor," he said, trying to regain composure, "you look different." "A proper shower works wonders," I replied, rising to embrace Jessica. "You look beautiful, sweetheart." Jessica hugged me tightly, whispering, "You look amazing, Mom." George stepped forward with a practiced smile, shaking Andrew's hand. "Andrew, good to see you again. Please, have a seat. I've taken the liberty of ordering a bottle of Bordeaux, Thomas's favorite." We settled at the table. Andrew's eyes flicked between us, unsettled. Gone was the polished widow he expected. Before him was a woman transformed, confident, ready. "Mr. Thompson mentioned you worked with Dad's company," Jessica said, her voice steady despite the icy wine pouring between us. "Were you involved in the early days?" George smiled warmly. "From the very beginning. Your father and I started with a single truck and more ambition than sense. But Thomas had vision, and your mother had business acumen. Quite the partnership." Jessica looked surprised. "Mom did far more than that. Negotiated contracts, managed clients, oversaw financial projections. Thomas built the structure, but your mother built the business." Andrew sipped his wine, expression skeptical. "Interesting. Elena never mentioned executive experience to me." "You never asked," I said simply. The waiter took our orders, offering a brief respite from tension. Once he departed, George shifted the conversation. "Andrew, Elena tells me you're preparing for an audit at Reynolds Financial. Always a stressful time for any firm." Andrew's grip tightened on his glass. "Just routine. Nothing to worry about." George smiled, but his tone was sharp. "Audits tend to get complicated when discrepancies arise." Andrew narrowed his eyes. "What are you implying?" "Nothing," George replied pleasantly. "Just making conversation. The financial industry depends on trust." "Indeed," Andrew said coldly. "Which is why Reynolds maintains the highest ethical standards." Jessica watched the exchange, unease growing. Speaking of client trust, I interjected smoothly. "Jessica and I were talking yesterday about the house loan." Andrew snapped his attention to me. "That's a private family matter, Elena." "Is it?" I pressed. "It affects me too. That house was my home for 40 years, built with Thomas." Turning to Jessica, I asked, "Have you asked to see documentation about those investments Andrew says will mature next quarter? The ones meant to repay the loan?" Jessica paled. "Mom, this isn't the time." "Due diligence is essential in any financial transaction," George added, "especially one involving your primary residence." Andrew set his glass down carefully. "With all due respect, Mr. Thompson, family finances are none of your business." "Perhaps not," George said, "but as Thomas's old friend and Elena's advisor, I feel responsible." Andrew's voice sharpened. "Advisor? What exactly are you advising her on?" George opened his briefcase and removed a manila folder. "Financial matters primarily. Elena asked me to review her options, given her current accommodations." Andrew's expression darkened. "Elena has no options. The house is in Jessica's name. She has no other significant assets." "That's where you're wrong," I said quietly. The moment had come. "I have options, Andrew. Many of them." I nodded to George, who slid the folder across the table. Jessica, curious despite her discomfort, opened it. Inside were statements for accounts she'd never seen, over $4 million in total. Her eyes widened. "Mom, what is this? Where did this money come from?" "Your father and I were careful planners," I explained. "We never kept all our eggs in one basket. The house was just one asset among many. Andrew snatched the folder, scanning the documents, alarm growing. This is impossible. You never mentioned these accounts. You never asked. You assumed I was destitute because it suited your narrative, I said. Just as you assumed I was financially illiterate because I'm older. Jessica looked between us, confusion melting into understanding. You had money all along while living in our garage? I wanted to see what would happen. How you and Andrew would treat me when you thought I had nothing to offer. It was educational. Andrew's face flushed red. This changes nothing. The house is still in Jessica's name. True, I acknowledged. And it can stay that way. I don't want the house back, Jessica. It was always meant to be yours. Then Andrew demanded, "What do you want?" "Respect," I said simply. "A proper living space within the house, with a private entrance and full autonomy. No using the house as collateral for business loans. And for you to treat Jessica with the respect she deserves." Andrew laughed harshly. "You think you can dictate terms now because you have a few accounts? That gives you no legal rights." "No, but it gives me options," I countered. "I could rent an apartment nearby, or buy a new house. But before I do, I want to discuss something else." I gestured to George, who produced a second folder. "What's this?" Andrew asked, weary. "Information about discrepancies at Reynolds Financial," George explained. "Irregularities in accounts belonging to clients like Margaret Winters and Edward Patel." The color drained from Andrew's face. "How did you?" "We have sources," I said. "Tomorrow, I'm meeting Margaret Winters. She wants to review her statements." Jessica looked bewildered. "Andrew, what is he talking about? What discrepancies?" Andrew ignored her, eyes fixed on me. "This is slander. You have no proof." "Not yet," I said, "but an SEC investigation will uncover the truth. Unless we come to an arrangement." "Blackmail," Andrew hissed, leaning in. "I prefer negotiation," I replied calmly. "Here are my terms. You create a proper living space for me in the house, with private entrance and autonomy. You will not use the house as collateral, and you will respect Jessica as your wife and Thomas Wilson's daughter." Andrew's jaw clenched. "And if I refuse?" "Then I meet with Margaret tomorrow, and the SEC the day after. Robert Reynolds wouldn't be pleased to have regulators combing through the firm before an audit." The waiter arrived with our entrees, forcing a ceasefire. Andrew sat rigid, not touching his food. Jessica watched us, piecing it together. "Mom, are you saying Andrew's firm is doing something illegal?" Before I could answer, Andrew cut in. "Your mother's making baseless accusations because she's bitter. There are no discrepancies." "Then you have nothing to worry about," George said, cheerfully interrupting. Jessica set down her fork. "Andrew, just tell me the truth. Is there something wrong with the company?" Andrew's voice was low and tense. "There have been irregularities, nothing illegal, just aggressive accounting." George repeated skeptically, "Unconventional." "That's one way to put it," Andrew said. "Using new client funds to pay returns to existing clients when investments have failed." Jessica gasped. "That's a Ponzi scheme." Andrew glared. "It's not that simple. We're working to recover. The loan would give us time." "Except if the investments don't recover, Jessica's home is at risk," I said. "It won't come to that," Andrew insisted. "I have a plan," I said. "But it won't involve Jessica's house anymore." Andrew's expression hardened, realizing he was cornered. "Fine. You get your living space in the house. East wing, separate entrance, private bath. But the SEC stays out, and the house remains untouched by loans. Non-negotiable." After a tense pause, he nodded curtly, "Agreed." I looked at Jessica, her world crumbling. "Jessica, I'm sorry you had to find out this way," I said gently. "But you needed to know. Tears welled. All this time, the way you treated Mom, the lies about the business. Was anything true? Andrew reached for her hand. Jessica pulled away. Everything was a lie. She stood abruptly. I need some air. Andrew turned to me, venom in his eyes. Satisfied now? You've ruined everything. No, Andrew, I said calmly. You did that yourself. I rose to follow Jessica, leaving George to handle Andrew. Outside, I found Jessica standing near the hotel's ornamental fountain, her arms wrapped tightly around herself against the evening chill. Her tears glistened in the dim light. Jess, I called softly. She turned, her face streaked with tears. Did you plan this? The dinner, the setup. Just to humiliate him? To humiliate me. No, I said gently, approaching. I planned it to protect you. To show you the truth. Before it was too late. Before the house was gone. Before the SEC came knocking. She flinched at my words, acknowledging their painful truth. I never wanted you in the garage, she whispered. That was Andrew's idea. He said it was temporary, just until his parents visited. But there was always someone else staying. Always another excuse, I said quietly. I know, she breathed. I don't blame you. You were manipulated by a master, Jess. But I let it happen, she said, the weight of guilt breaking through. I watched him treat you like garbage and did nothing, she sobbed. Your father would be ashamed of me, she added. I drew her into my arms, holding her as she sobbed, the mother's heart aching for her child. Your father would understand, I whispered. Andrew preyed on your trust and love. That's not your fault. What happens now? She asked, voice small against my shoulder. That depends on you, I replied. Jessica pulled back, wiping tears from her cheeks. I don't know what I want anymore. Everything I thought I knew, my life, my marriage, it's all been a lie. Not everything, I said. I'm still here. And I'm not going anywhere. Not again. She managed a watery smile. Even after how I treated you. Even then. That's family, Jess. Not conditional, not transactional. Just love through the good and the bad. She nodded and took a deep breath. I need time. To think about Andrew, the business, everything. You have time, I assured her. And options. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. After Jessica left with George, I called Margaret Winters to postpone our meeting, citing a family emergency. She was understanding, though disappointed. I've been going through my statements, she told me. The numbers don't add up. Not even close. I know, I said. We'll get to the bottom of it. I just need a few days to handle personal matters. Next, I called Michael Gartner, an attorney my husband and I had worked with for decades. I told him everything, the fraud, Andrew's threats, Jessica's safety. This is serious, Elena, he said gravely. If money laundering is involved, this goes beyond securities fraud. We need to act carefully. What can we do to protect Jessica? First, separate her legally from Andrew and the firm. Divorce proceedings can start immediately if she agrees. Second, document everything. Threats, intimidation, all conversations. Third, consider reporting to the authorities. The SEC or maybe even the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. They handle criminal cases like this. I swallowed hard. The FBI. This had become far more dangerous than I ever imagined. Let me speak with Jessica first, I said. This should be her decision. Of course. But be careful, Elena. Andrew might get desperate if he suspects you're going to the feds. Desperate people do desperate things. I ended the call and made one final call to Martha, asking her to pick up some of my belongings from the house while Andrew wasn't there. Don't antagonize him, I warned. That pompous bully doesn't scare me, Martha scoffed. I'll be in and out before he knows what happened. She brought a suitcase filled with essentials and reported the house was a mess, papers scattered everywhere, especially in Andrew's office. It seemed Andrew had been searching for something. "Did you see anything else unusual?" I asked. "There was a black sedan parked down the street," Martha said thoughtfully. "Tinted windows. Didn't belong here." A chill ran down my spine. Later, unpacking at the hotel, I found a sealed envelope addressed to me in Thomas's handwriting. Inside was a letter dated weeks before his death, a small key, and a note. "My dearest Elena, if you're reading this, it means you finally stood up for yourself. Good for you, my love. I always knew you would. I've left something for you in our special place, the hidden compartment in the master bedroom closet. Use it wisely. All my love, Thomas." My hands trembled as I realized the truth. Thomas had been preparing for this, anticipating the day I would need protection. That night, I returned to the house, using my key to enter quietly. Andrew's car was gone, the house dark and silent. I made my way to the closet in the master bedroom, found the concealed latch, and opened it. Inside was a fireproof lockbox. I used the key to open it, revealing a USB drive, a larger safe deposit box key, and another envelope marked urgent. The second letter told me everything. Thomas had been investigating Reynolds Financial and its connections to money laundering for years. He had sent copies of evidence to trusted contacts in the FBI but left me the insurance policy for when the day came. I pocketed the USB and keys just as I heard footsteps downstairs. Andrew was back. Heart pounding, I scrambled up the attic ladder just as he entered the closet. His voice echoed below. "Eleanor, I know you're here. Your perfume lingers. Like mother, like daughter." He knew. I found the missing items. "What did Thomas leave behind? You think your evidence will save you? It won't." His words chilled me. He warned he would find Jessica, knew about the cabin in Vermont, and promised a long conversation about family loyalty. I waited until he left, then tried to call Jessica and George, but my phone had no signal. Suddenly, a man in a dark suit appeared beside Martha's car with an FBI badge. "Mrs. Wilson," he said. "We need to talk. It concerns your daughter's safety." I felt a mix of fear and relief as I got into the car. Agent Harris explained the FBI had been watching Reynolds Financial for years, acting on Thomas's information. Andrew had called a known hitman after I left the house. Jessica and George were already in protective custody. I was next. He told me about witness protection and that I'd be relocated until the threat was neutralized. I realized then, this was no longer just about financial fraud. It was a battle for survival. I packed the documents and evidence George and I had collected. As we left, I looked back at the house Thomas and I built, the foundation for everything I was fighting to protect. The drive away from Maplewood felt surreal, the familiar streets slipping behind me like a life I was leaving permanently. The house Thomas and I had built, the home filled with decades of memories, laughter, and love, now felt distant, like a place frozen in time while the storm around it raged uncontrollably. I kept glancing at the rearview mirror, half expecting to see Andrew's BMW trailing us, but the road behind was empty. Agent Harris broke the silence with a voice calm but firm. "We'll get you somewhere safe. The FBI has arranged for you to stay at a secure location until this case moves forward. It's not forever, but your safety is the priority." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. I understood the necessity of this step, but felt the weight of what I was leaving behind. Everything I'd built with Thomas, the life I'd lived, my daughter's childhood, all gone in an instant. The safe house was a modest apartment in a quiet neighborhood far from Maplewood's familiar streets. It was functional, sterile even, with plain walls and minimal decoration. There was no warmth, no history, no sense of home. Unpacking the few belongings Martha had been able to retrieve from the house, I tried to steady my thoughts. The identity the FBI had given me, Diana Phillips, a retired librarian, felt alien, but it was necessary. The agents had arranged self-defense classes and counseling. They explained it was common for witnesses in cases like mine to feel vulnerable, fearful. I was no stranger to fear, But this was different. It wasn't just about financial betrayal anymore. It was about survival. Days blurred into weeks as the investigation intensified. FBI agents and prosecutors worked tirelessly, connecting dots that I hadn't even imagined. Every piece of Thomas's evidence, combined with what George and I uncovered, was woven into a damning case against Reynolds Financial. The pattern was clear, a Ponzi scheme hidden behind aggressive accounting, with ties to organized crime and offshore accounts. Throughout it all, I kept in regular contact with Jessica. Each monitored phone call was a balm and a painful reminder of the distance, both physical and emotional, that Andrew's lies had created. Jessica was trying to rebuild her life, untangle the web of deceit, and learn to trust again. One chilly autumn evening, the phone rang. It was Agent Harris. "We've made a major breakthrough. Robert Reynolds was arrested in a coordinated FBI raid this morning." Relief washed over me. With Robert in custody, the criminal heart of the firm was finally exposed. "And Andrew?" I asked, breath-catching. "Still out there. He's now a high-priority target. The arrest warrant will be served soon." The news steeled my resolve. Andrew wasn't just a corrupt financier. He was dangerous, and justice had to be served. As the trial date approached, Jessica and I were coached relentlessly on testimony, courtroom demeanor, and dealing with the inevitable attacks from Andrew's defense team. I marveled at Jessica's transformation. The confident, composed woman who took the stand was a far cry from the fragile daughter I'd last seen. Our bond, tested and reforged, was a shield I clung to. The courthouse was intimidating, its cold marble halls and imposing columns a stark reminder that this was where truth and justice collided. Sitting in the witness waiting room, I felt the weight of every moment that led us here. The years of manipulation, the threats, the sacrifices. Jessica testified first. I watched the video feed as she told her story, steady and unflinching. The isolation Andrew imposed, the control over their finances, the betrayal she uncovered. Her voice was firm, clear, every word a strike against the man she once loved. The defense attorney attempted to portray her as vindictive, a woman turning on her husband for trivial reasons, but Jessica's calm and detailed testimony dismantled that narrative. When my turn came, I stepped into the courtroom with my head held high. Andrew's eyes narrowed at the sight of me, surprise flickering in his carefully constructed mask. I recounted my own journey, from being relegated to the garage, to discovering Andrew's affair, to uncovering the financial irregularities and threats that had pushed me into hiding. I laid bare the evidence Thomas had left me, the hidden compartment, the USB drive, the safe deposit box key, and the terrifying reality of Andrew's criminal network. The prosecution meticulously presented the case, each witness and document chipping away at Andrew's defenses. Former employees revealed the pressure to manipulate returns, the secret VIP accounts, the shredding of documents before audits. Experts explained the Ponzi scheme mechanics. Most devastating were the testimonies of former criminal associates who had flipped on the Reynolds family, revealing ties to drug trafficking and illegal gambling. Despite maintaining his innocence and claiming ignorance, the overwhelming evidence showed Andrew as a knowing participant in the fraud. The jury deliberated for what felt like an eternity. When the verdict was finally read, the courtroom held its breath. On the counts of securities fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy, we find the defendant Andrew Reynolds guilty on all counts. Jessica squeezed my hand tightly, tears pricking my eyes. Andrew's shoulders sagged, his carefully crafted world collapsing around him. Outside, Jessica linked her arm through mine. "What now?" she asked softly. "We go home," I said. Driving back through familiar streets, the house came into view, the colonial with its wraparound porch and familiar roofline. It looked unchanged, yet everything felt different. Jessica told me about the renovations, the garage demolished, replaced with a new addition that had its own entrance, kitchen, and bedrooms just for me. Independence finally restored. Tears filled my eyes. "It's perfect," I whispered. Jessica smiled. "No more looking back. We move forward." Inside, Martha had prepared a welcome home dinner. The cherrywood table, Thomas's pride, was set for 4. George joined us, a steady presence through every upheaval. We raised our glasses to justice, to new beginnings, to the resilience of family. As the sunset painted the room in warm hues, I felt the house breathe with life again. It was more than walls and wood. It was the foundation of everything we'd fought for. For the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. The first morning back in the house was a quiet one. Sunlight filtered softly through the curtains, casting warm golden patterns on the floor. I sat by the window, sipping coffee and watching the garden Martha had so lovingly tended bloom with renewed vigor. The familiar scents of roses and freshly cut grass stirred memories of happier times, the laughter of children, summer barbecues, the steady hum of family life. Jessica joined me in the kitchen, her face still marked with traces of the trial's strain but also with a hint of hope. "It feels strange," she admitted quietly, "like I'm here but not really home yet." I nodded, understanding. "Healing takes time, Jess. This house, our home, it's more than just a place. It's the heart and the soul we put into it. We'll rebuild that together." The house was still full of reminders of the past, some painful, others comforting. Andrew's cold renovations had altered much, but the essence of the home remained. It was ours again, reclaimed not just legally but emotionally. George stopped by mid-morning, bearing news from the ongoing settlement discussions. The firm's remaining assets were frozen, but there were promising leads on recovering funds for defrauded clients. The process would be slow and fraught, but at least justice was moving forward. "What about Andrew?" I asked. "He's in custody, awaiting sentencing," George said grimly. "Plea deal for now, but he's facing serious time." "It's a relief." Jessica and I exchanged a glance, relief tempered by the wounds that would take longer to heal. The coming weeks were filled with practicalities. Meeting with attorneys, handling insurance, beginning to untangle the financial wreckage left behind. Martha helped transform the formerly sterile guest room into a welcoming suite for me. Soft linens, fresh flowers, photos of Thomas and Jessica. Small acts that made the space feel like home. One afternoon, Jessica and I sat in the garden, sunlight dappling through the leaves overhead. She reached for my hand, her eyes steady and clear. "Mom, thank you. For everything. For fighting for me, for us, even when I couldn't see the truth." I smiled, squeezing her hand. "You don't have to thank me. We did this together. And we're going to keep doing it." The bond between us felt stronger than ever, forged through adversity and shared strength. Jessica was no longer just my daughter. She was my partner in this new chapter. As the days grew cooler and the garden prepared for winter's rest, I found myself reflecting on everything we'd endured. The lies, the betrayal, the fear, they had threatened to destroy us, but instead, they had revealed our resilience. The house, once a symbol of control and deceit, was now a beacon of renewal and hope. And through it all, I felt Thomas's presence, steady, loving, a reminder that even in the darkest times, love endures. Jessica stood beside me, her hand in mine, ready to face whatever came next. We were home.